All right, what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. Today we're joined by a special guest here on YouTube, our YouTube channel. But be sure to like us, share the video, subscribe, but go to Rumble, go to BitChute, go to Brighteon because YouTube loves to censor us, and we're going to be talking about some really important topics here today. So I'm joined by not just a friend, but a really, really cool star brother I met 15 years ago, Mr. James Rink. As you all know him on YouTube as Super Soldier Talk. And James has done some phenomenal interviews over the years with some really, really cutting edge, outspoken people that are really talking about, the real agenda, what's really going on. So I'm real excited that Star Brother James here flew into Florida and we had this time to do some interviews. So without further ado, James, what I'd like to focus on and jump into today is about the NASA secret space program. Have you heard a lot about over the years interviewing people and
Well, my understanding, the NASA secret space program, at least NASA itself, was an extension of Project Paperclip. It was the cabal's alternative for what was taking place with the Germans in Antarctica, because they were very jealous when Alan Dulles, Wild Bill Donovan were going over to Switzerland, snatching up these Project Paperclip Nazis, and they're finding they're going into these underground facilities under Germany and seeing how advanced the Germans were. They were very concerned. So that's probably why they set up NASA. But before NASA was founded, I think it was like 1950 when it came into being. The U.S. Navy had their own rocket program, Warner von Braun and all that. So that program continued on to become the U.S. Space Navy. And NASA is being projected to the public as the so-called space program. It's actually just psyop or whatever you want to call it.
cover up?
Yeah.
And if people watching this don't know, everything we talk about, please research, look it up. Operation Paperclip is really well documented. They took over, I believe, 1,400 different Nazis, SS soldiers, commanders, and they put them right into our government. Warren Braun, who he said was the head of NASA, and a lot of SS Nazis have the scar on their face from fencing. They used to do that. So you'll see like Congress and a lot of people in the 40s and 50s after World War II have this scar on their face. That's from the fencing that the SS soldiers did. So they took these Nazis, they put them into power here and developed these different space programs to really funnel the technology and the energy and things like that they were creating. So the NASA secret space program is nothing more than just really a front. As many of you know, we really didn't really go to the moon. As Buzz Aldrin and many others have shared with us over the years. You can see the interview with Buzz Aldrin. Did you see that where a 10-year-old girl asked her, Buzz, like, why don't we go back to the moon? We haven't been there in so long. And he's like, that's a great question. I wonder that myself. And supposedly he's the guy who walked on the moon. So there's all these cover-ups and things that are going on. And you've been interviewing a lot of people. Have you interviewed people over the years, James, that have been directly involved or somewhat involved with this NASA secret space program?
Let's see here. Well, there are some whistleblowers that, for instance, have reported that they have seen pictures of different like vessels that were being blacked out, white out. They Photoshop them. So there is a certain photo lab. They don't show what's actually the original photos. They don't show it to the public before it gets whitewashed. So there are reports of that. So I believe NASA has access to these programs, but I don't think I think they're probably like the bottom of the rung, like sort of similar to DARPA. They get the bottom of the rung of the technology through all the planetary corporations. But so tell us what oh, by the way, you want to introduce the other.
Oh, so this is our pet parrot. This is Bubby here. He is a green cheek parrot, beautiful rainbow colored parrot, and he's hanging out. James came over and Bubby took a liking to him, so we brought Bubby in the interview today. So Bubby's gonna be hanging out with us in the interview. One of the things that prompted this interview, James, I just want to share is my experience with NASA, and that was when I was in 8th grade, right? So I was in public middle school here in Boca Raton, Florida, about 700 kids, and I used to get in trouble in middle school, and I was a troublemaker. And for whatever reason, they took 7 or 8 of us to this NASA trip. And I remember going to NASA, and I remember going there, and I remember going into a room, like a little theater room, to like watch like a little movie. They have in museums. You go and watch a little movie. I don't remember anything after that. And next thing I remember was eating space ice cream, of course. I'm sure maybe you had it over the years, the dried space ice cream. And then I remember walking on like the tarmac to go look at the space shuttle. And that was it. A long story short, like about 20 years later, one of the girls that was with me at the trip called me up like about 5 years ago. And she's like, oh, I'm trying to get a hold of you. I've had memories of what happened to us at NASA. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, don't you remember, Jonah? Don't you remember what happened to us and what they did to us? I'm like, no. Yeah, Bubby. And I actually don't remember anything that happened to us. I don't remember going there. I just remember going into one of those little theaters to watch like a movie, I guess they were going to show us. And then, of course, eating ice cream, which, when they do these type of psyops on kids, they always do something either very painful, so you wash the memory, or they do something very nice, like, oh, here's a kid to give you ice cream. So you have that memory. But she went on and said that she had these memories about them doing stuff to us there. I don't nothing sexual, but more of scanning, implanting, things like that. And I believe now in retrospect that was probably pulling us star seeds, us highly advanced souls, I would say, off out of the school, because there was no reason for me to go. I was a troublemaker, and that trip was supposed to be for like the top 8 people out of 700 at the school. But it was very interesting. And then, it came to me in a dream. Some memories started coming back of that. And then when I woke up, it said to contact James because you've had experience with other people like this. Now, when people have memories, is it more dream state or is it actual physical state that they have these memories with NASA?
First, do you have missing time, or more specifically, do you have years of your childhood that are blanked out?
Entire years. Absolutely. Yeah, I actually don't remember anything from about 10 years old and under. Maybe like a handful of things. That's it. I actually don't remember much at all.
Right.
Entire years.
So they would put cover memories for your time in the secret space program. That's usually a telltale sign that you are part of these projects. If you have years of your life, for me, the age of 5 to 6 are totally blank.
Yeah.
Anything before the age of 3 are blank. I don't know if that's maybe probably normal, but so yeah. So the other question is about, what about NASA? Like, what was it?
Yeah, the other people that have had experiences like me, is it more in dream state that they have memories? Is it more like physical, where they actually have a physical memory? Like, I know I physically went to NASA, but I don't remember going there. I don't remember what they did. And this is 8th grade. So I was like 13, 14 years old, which I remember a lot from my childhood. 14. I remember, so I would remember a trip to NASA. But I do not remember anything about that day except what I told you. It was super, super, blanked out.
Right. Well, I think they're putting cover memories in there, and that's maybe why, if you're getting these Mandela effects, they might be getting information from another alternate reality, and they're covering up your memories. You might have memories of spending time on the beach with your family, but you could be in, say, some kind of program where they experiment on children. But yeah, I think, Jonah, you're probably an experiencer. Has anybody told you this yet?
No, besides my friend, I'm not going to use her name, who called me, and she was trying to find me for many years and got a hold of me. And she said, yeah, they definitely did stuff to us. They took us, they did stuff to us. She has more memory than me. We talked for a while, a couple hours on the phone. And just recently, that's why I contacted you, because I had this really intense dream of the NASA situation with me. And when I woke up, it was just like, call James Rink and do an interview with him to talk about your experience, and see if there's others out there. There's others you watching this video. Contact us. We that's sort of what you do. We need to share the information and talk, because how I met James was through Super Soldier Talk, and we'll get into that in another video. What exactly is a super soldier? But they're highly advanced souls that they use like us because of our genetics and DNA, and they pull us, out of sort of this reality and use us for things, for better words. Yeah.
Right. So I guess we can go back to the actual treaty on how this take place. So earlier on, we were discussing Operation High Jump. So for people out there who don't know, there was a operation back in, it took place like in 1948 to 1950, over a period of 2 years or so. There's various missions, but Admiral Byrd was recruited to bring a fleet down into Antarctica, because there was rumors that the Germans were bringing personnel through U-boats up from Germany down into Antarctica, beginning roughly around 1938 or 39, when they went into caverns in Antarctica, where they found volcanic activity that actually warmed it up. So they found an environment, an isolated part of the world where they could continue on their experiments that they were doing in anti-gravitic technology and other technologies in time travel. Later on, we can go into that. But so the Americans wanted to take care of the Germans once and for all. So what ended up happening is that during World War II, the Germans, even though they were working on these flying platform technology, it has this force field around it, so you cannot shoot projectiles, weapons out, conventional weapons. So it wasn't until the 1948, after the end of the war, when the Germans developed laser technology that were able to be utilized so they could weaponize these craft. So yeah, the Americans were defeated, and as a result, there was a stalemate between that period around 48 or 1950 to 1954. There was something called the McCarthy era in the United States, where allegedly Senator McCarthy was looking for communists, but what they were actually looking for were Germans that had infiltrated under. But so while that was going on, that's when Project Paperclip took place. And so ultimately what happened in 1954, a truce, I guess say that, was made with the Germans, in which the Germans agreed, because they were already opening up bases, facilities on the moon and on Mars. There were already colonies on Mars and even other colonies like planet Vulcan, which is located inside our sun. And that's where the Star Trek series is based off of. By the way, Spock is real, Vulcans are real. They're 5 foot tall, not big. They're the little tiny elves. But anyway, so before I get distracted, yeah. So the Germans, agreed. They agreed to make a treaty with Americans. But they were not willing to give technology, they were willing to give theory. So the Americans allowed them to, Antarctic Germans, again, there's 300,000 Antarctic Germans at this point, to be put on all the different boards of directors of major corporations, also universities and government, even senators as well. So, the United States government is a corporation, so that as well. And the Germans, what they wanted is personnel, because they lost a lot of personnel building out bases on the moon, the 100-acre area that they made a deal with the Draco. Again, that was 1938, 39, that took place. And also bases on Mars. There were a lot of critters on Mars, giant spiders that are very deadly that you cannot outrun. So the Germans were losing. At this point, they lost roughly like a third or a quarter of their population. So that's why they wanted personnel. So they told the Americans that they would bring, initially it was 55,000 people per year, and that they would serve for 5-year terms. At the end of the 5-year term, they'll be offered a chance to have German citizenship in the off-world colonies, or they'll be returned. So what happened in 1955, the Germans developed mind erasure technology, which really just came from the ET that they were wheeling and dealing. And that's where in this whole 20-year and back, because it went from 5 years to 20 years, and they found they could do repeated 20 years. It gets to a point when you start becoming mentally ill if they do more than 40 years. But so it's grown from 55,000 people per year to now over 1 million. So initially, 98% of the people that are being abducted were slaves, but now it's sort of changed because a lot of these colonies have been built out. And but they're always looking for certain genetics. They want star seeds. They want people that are indigos. They're looking for ET hybrids, people that are part of these, already connected to these star groups. And because they obviously anybody with abilities. So Jonah, question to you. Typically, they're looking for like bloodlines. Is there anyone in your family that might have been connected to these projects, or they might be interested in?
Yeah, sure. So, good question. I know that so my bloodlines and genetics definitely, I feel, go back to royalty. My father was Irish Dutch. My mother was Russian and Polish Jew. So my grandparents, came from Polish Russian, and my father was Irish and Dutch. And their bloodlines, I know I've traced back, but like my family, my grandfather was in World War II. He was a prisoner by the Nazis for 9 months in World War II. He was in a POW camp. There's people, from what he told me, he used to smuggle in radio parts to radio the Allies of where they were. So they surrounded the camp and eventually liberated them. He told me a lot of stories while he was in there. My great great uncle, my uncle Julie, served in World War II too, in the Flying Fortresses. He was in the tail gunner in the bubble, and he was shot down 3 times. The third time they released him. But my uncle as well was in Vietnam. So all my family has is battle hardened. They've all served. And me myself, I did not go in the military. But I practice, firearms and things, in my own ways. But yeah, I believe that the DNA and bloodlines from my family do go back. And I know that on my Celtic side with my father, my family name Yeoman is still out there today in Holland, doing stuff. My father found them, not too long ago. So yeah, I don't doubt it. This is why I want to talk, is because some people may be watching this too, maybe like, oh my God, people on Mars, people on the moon, this is crazy. But I've interviewed hundreds of people myself since 2010 when we met, like Laura Eisenhower, who's a great President Eisenhower's granddaughter. And Laura was recruited to go to Mars. And I've interviewed people that worked in the jump rooms in the government. Obama was in the jump rooms, and as you know, and many people, CIA, FBI informants, all these people have been trained. So I used to interview a lot of people like Men in Black, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. I used to interview him. That told us these stories. We're not just hearsay, but we have interviewed people like myself. So I know that this stuff is real. But when you have total memory blackout, it's hard to put the pieces together. So that's why I want to interview, to get more information about, other experiencers that have experience like me, total blackout. Like I don't remember pretty much anything in my childhood. Super, super strange.
Right. Well, one thing I like to mention is that the Germans, the New Schwablanders, that they actually call themselves, they considered Hitler as mentally ill, so they didn't want to provide any support to the German forces because of what was going on, how they were interning the Jews. So the modern day Germans, they've lost the racist policies. However, the upper class officers typically require German, but yeah, there are colonies in the German breakaway that are uniquely European. We had Tony Rodriguez, he's mentioned. There's New Amsterdam, which is basically a copy of Amsterdam on the Planetoid series. It's actually not Planetoid. It's like what is it, like an asteroid? And then also there's 3 main cities: Mars, New Berlin, which is the biggest one, and that's where the Mars Academy is. It's typically where they would take recruits that are brought in, that 55,000 or million people they take each year. And then there's also New Warburg, and I think the other one is New Nuremberg, but there's also another New Nuremberg on Titan. We had John Whitberg on my show anyway, and he talked about how that the Germans found a magnetosphere, because Titan is obviously very cold, but and the magnetosphere, it's climate controlled, and there's about 50 million people there. Because what they actually did, the Germans, is I don't know if I mentioned this. Okay, I'll mention that the Germans actually started going to Mars in the 1850s through these portal tech. So it wasn't when they got the intergravitic tech during the Vril girl, the Vril Damen, and that was like the 1920s. You would think there was the intergravitic technology has existed at least since the 1850s, and maybe even further back with Tartaria, which actually becomes a huge blur because there's that Mandela effect.
Where'd Tartaria go? We were talking about.
Yeah. So some people might actually, it's like we remember in our consciousness, but we've been reset so much by these negative ETs because they view us as competition. They don't want, because we were created as a slave species, a slave race, and this planet is a giant farm. So they don't want the product escaping the farm.
And I know, like, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about with the portals and things like that, is definitely true. You've interviewed people that have been to Mars, that have actually, been there. I've interviewed people that have worked in the technology, the jump rooms for Mars. So, I know that once you talk to enough people with the same story, people aren't making this up. It's really factual, and it answers a lot of questions too about all the abductions. There's been over 3 million, Americans that have been abducted, and that's a very large number. That's like 1% of the population. I know a lot of the presidents, like Hitler, met with Greys and ETs, and Woodrow Wilson and other presidents here met with ETs, including Eisenhower himself, I believe, on 3 occasions, from what Laura said. met with ETs. So, and all of our indigenous tribes on this planet knew they came from the stars, and all of them met with ETs as well. You're talking about just every indigenous tribe on the planet. So this is not foreign, that leaders and people didn't meet with them, but the technology, the lasers, fiber optics, I know, and I believe a lot of that came from ETs as well. We didn't develop the technology; it was traded, for humans or whatever the packs were. But if you have had blacked out experiences as a kid, like I have, and maybe very well that you have been involved in one of these space programs, supposedly space programs. I don't know. What do you think about what NASA's doing now with the new Space Force and things like that? Why do you think all of a sudden like NASA's turned back on the last few years? And have you heard anything about what's going on? Or
Well, my understanding is that Space Force was initially reconstituted from other groups. We had U.S. Space Command, and we're going back to the U.S. Space Navy and other groups that used to be under like some kind of quasi, I wouldn't really call it cabal control, because the early secret space program, going back to the Sonora Aerospace Club and also the Cosmic Club, where the Cosmos Club, they were experimenting. They were creating these platforms that could levitate, and that's why I guess the Frank Reader. They show these drawings that look like these wonky crafts that supposedly could fly. Some of these crafts actually had conventional technology, were designed to look like conventional, but they had these secret devices, in there to. So they would show two versions, one to the public, which these scientists were very arrogant. They thought they were more superior than everybody else, and they would laugh at how dumb people, I guess. So unfortunately, our own species kind of slowed us out. But so that technology ultimately, darn it, I forgot the question, but I wanted to comment also about Eisenhower. So the treaty I think Eisenhower made a huge mistake by signing the treaty with these negative grays, because Eisenhower was very concerned about these Germans that were coming into our country, infiltrating. So he made the deal with these negative grays to get, because he wanted to get atomic weapons. He wanted weapon technology. He thought he was trying to defend the country, but ultimately the whole program became usurped, because a lot of places like Dulce or even Area 51, the human personnel that were supposed to be working together quickly became implanted and droned out by these negative aliens. So that's why we had the Dulce War, where a team of, I think actually Phil Schneider talked about that, where he went down into Dulce and cleared it out with these grays. So but anyway, I think I answered your question.
Yeah, so and just wrapping it up here, for everyone listening to this, if you're not familiar with a lot of this stuff, do your own research, check it out. A lot of this stuff is documented. Operation Paperclip, Operation High Jump, these things are documented, real, missions and things. I do believe the Fourth Reich Nazi power is in control today. They're really running the show here in America. They're definitely responsible for the what that I'm not going to mention. But it's definitely an evil force that's running the show. And when you look at it, these bankers that they funded this side, they funded Hitler, they funded us. They're like, these bankers are using the human race as pawns, and we know who controls the bankers. They're multidimensional, higher races that are running the human population. It's not humans that are running the show, that's for sure. That's without a doubt. All the child trafficking, all the real stuff that goes on that we can't really get into because this is YouTube, but we can get into more on other channels. But the human spirit, they're innate, is not demonic. It's not really bad. Humans are not born like that. But when you're born into a traumatic system like this that's set up to traumatize us, you can get away literally with murder. You can get away with programming humans and programming them what to do, and that's what's going on today. So people really need to wake up to the bigger empire that's running the planet, which is the multidimensional aspect that we're talking about, and that's what is allowing these technologies to get us to Mars and all these other places. And it's really happening. So I think it's really important that people here do the research and don't just poo-poo this, but do the research, because if people really knew that these hierarchy, multidimensional, demonic beings were really running the planet and harming the children, I think we'd have a lot different tune of what's going on, and Bubby agrees. We would treat things differently. You know, it's not just, you know, humans being mean to each other. It's humans are being controlled by these dark satanic forces that really have had power here for hundreds of thousands of years. We go way back.
Thank you. You know what? Now I remember you had a question about the Space Force. So yeah, that was basically the idea. Eventually, for the cabal or the elites, eventually some of these dark hats became gray hats, and maybe they even turned white hat. The idea was to eventually tell the public that these programs are real, but they've done so many horrible things. How do they explain to the public? A million people have been taken per year. Basically, they hijack the reincarnation cycle, essentially, where you're taken away 20 years. You can either be your consciousness placed in a clone body, or you serve in your own physical vessel, which sometimes they do as a punishment. And then at the end of the 20 years, your memories are wiped and you're sent back. Now, if you're a bad person, they wouldn't wipe your memories, especially they would put you in a slave colony. So that has happened. But ideally, the goal is to create a, I guess, plausible deniability kind of situation where they would have this advanced technology be just demonstrated to the public as a, oh, look, we've created this new space force, and now look at all these technology that we've invented, and we want to share it. But they've had it for 150 years, you know. But the good news is Space Force is on the council, the Trimeritive Council, located on the moon, where different planetary corporations meet under the ICC, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. And these, I think there's initially 13 now groups on there on this Trimeritive, but we have different groups like Monarch, Umbrella Corporation, which is featured in Resident Evil. Umbrella is real. It's headed by Richard Bay, who in this reality, his clone is Tom Cruise. Monarch is the clone of him. It's headed by Paul Serene. His clone is Kevin Spacey. And then there's other planetary corporations that you may not need some aware of, like Mobius, and there's the Shaw House. And that's pretty much, that's connected to, like the House of Cain, and pretty much human traffic. I guess I'll say that word. Located under the city of London. They have a dome there that's basically, it's in a pocket reality outside of time. But there's other, so there's really bad planetary corporations, but then you have some other groups like Dark Fleet, which has been around for 10,000 years or so. But the Nazis became aligned with Dark Fleet because their ideologies were similar. But essentially, Dark Fleet, the reason why they call it dark is their ships are very dark, but some of their craft are up to the Philion. I think it's 18 miles, if I'm not mistaken, long. But so now that Space Force is on the council, it's very likely that I believe the planet is flipped, and now they're just trying to figure out a way to do the disclosure. But I guess we're helping them along because in a way they should have been doing this, but we're doing it for them, and we're not even getting paid. But I guess it's not about money. It's about trying to raise a planetary consciousness.
I mean, we're definitely not benefiting from this. We're just trying to get information out to open people's minds up to other realities that are happening around us, and we don't benefit anything from it. But definitely check out James' website and our YouTube channel, Super Soldier Talk, and please check out quantumcollective.world. We got some amazing supplements and detox products to help you. And give a shout out to the Blue. Everyone's on the Blue. If you're not on the Blue, check out quantumcollective.world. Click the link below. Get on the Blue. It's probably the top supplement in the world that you can get to detox yourself, energy. I got to get use some of the Blue before our next interview. But get on the Blue and research this stuff. NASA secret space program, Operation Paperclip. Do your research, because the information's out there. You got to sift through it, but you could find it, and they're doing a very good job trying to hide it day by day. They're censoring everything these days. So check out James's site. James, thanks again for the interview, and we'll put out some more videos soon so people can learn some more about Super Soldier Talk and some other topics out there that are taboo. So click the links below, subscribe, and do what you can to get this information out there. Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you. And go to supersolartalk.com. Yeah, thanks.